On my 21st birthday, the morning sun didn't feel warm. It felt like a spotlight, exposing everything I thought I had left behind. My dad stood in the kitchen holding a small, dusty box, the kind you'd expect to find old photos or forgotten trinkets in. Instead, when he pushed it into my hands, I felt something flat and stiff inside. A one-way bus ticket. "Good luck out there," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. My sister leaned against the counter with that familiar smirk she wore whenever she felt victorious. Maybe she imagined I'd crawl back home in a month begging for help. My mum tried to hug me, her arms trembling as if she wished she could undo everything happening in that moment. I didn't say a word. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I hugged her back, stepped outside, and let the door close softly behind me, almost like the final page of a chapter I never wanted written. They never suspected the truth. I wasn't some struggling kid with no direction. I wasn't helpless, clueless, or lost. I was the youngest co-founder of a $40 million tech empire built quietly, secretly, while pretending to be the family failure. And exactly 7 days later, everything they thought they knew would flip upside down. But if you really want to understand what happened a week later, you have to know what happened in those 30 seconds after the bus pulled away, the 30 seconds that changed everything. Because sometimes revenge doesn't come wrapped in anger or shouted words. Sometimes revenge walks quietly beside you, disguised as destiny. That 30-second moment is the reason the world eventually heard my name, and why my family finally understood what they had thrown away. The bus rumbled forward, but instead of sitting inside, I stood on the side of the road watching it shrink into the distance. I had no intention of boarding it. I let the wind whip against my jacket as I typed a message to someone whose contact name was simply M. He replied instantly, "Ready?" And that one word marked the true beginning of the storm I was about to unleash. Not out of spite, but out of truth, justice, and the satisfaction of rising above everything they believed I was. A week later, when the world discovered who I really was, my family discovered what it meant to underestimate the quiet one. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. The reason that bus ticket didn't break me was because my journey had already started years before. At 16, while my dad constantly reminded me that my sister was the smart one, I'd been building websites on a hand-me-down laptop. My sister got a car for her 16th birthday. I got a cracked screen and a power cord held together with electrical tape. But I didn't complain. I didn't need anyone to believe in me. I just needed space to create. When my dad told people I'd never amount to anything, I was writing code that companies would later pay millions to license. When my sister bragged about her college applications, I was designing the algorithm that would revolutionize automated security verification. And when my mum whispered, "Maybe he'll find something he's good at," I had already found it. I just didn't have the heart to tell her that the son she worried about was on track to become one of the youngest millionaires in the country. M, whose real name was Mason, entered the picture when I was 17. He was older, brilliant, and saw potential in me long before I saw it in myself. Together, we built the foundation of the company. Late nights, greasy takeout, and more failed prototypes than I could count. What we created eventually became Ghost Shield Technologies, and by 20, we had closed Series B funding that skyrocketed our valuation into the tens of millions. And yet, on the day I turned 21, I walked out of my parents' house with a one-way bus ticket, like some exile. They had no idea that the son they believed couldn't survive on his own had already been featured anonymously in Forbes under the title "The Unknown Genius Behind a Tech Revolution." Why anonymously? Because Mason and I decided early on that staying hidden would protect us from early sabotage, copycats, and the corporate sharks that prey on young innovators. But after that birthday morning, I realized hiding wasn't just unnecessary, it was no longer acceptable. A week later, Ghost Shield was scheduled to launch its biggest breakthrough yet, a real-time adaptive security AI capable of detecting threats before they happen. It was a system major banks, hospitals, and even government agencies were bidding on, and the world was about to meet its creators. I planned to step into the light, on my terms, but fate had its own timing. On day 3 after my birthday, my dad called. I stared at the screen, unsure why he'd bother. After letting it ring, I answered out of curiosity. "You found a place to stay?" he asked with the exhaustion of someone who couldn't imagine I could handle anything alone. "I'm fine," I replied. "Good," he said, clearing his throat. "Your sister needs the room for her new project, so don't plan on coming back." There it was, the final push, the final confirmation that walking away wasn't a loss, it was liberation. When the call ended, I felt something unexpected, relief. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. They had pushed me out thinking they were closing a door. They didn't know I had been quietly building entire worlds behind that door. On day 5, Mason and I met with the board. "You really want to reveal your identity now?" he asked. I nodded. "I think it's time." Day 6 was preparation. Press releases drafted, media connections notified, invitations sent to the product launch. Everything lined up like dominoes waiting for the final push. And then came day 7, the day everything changed. The venue was packed. Cameras everywhere. Reporters buzzing like anxious bees. Mason stood on stage first, introducing the story of Ghost Shield, revealing how an unnamed teen prodigy helped build the most advanced security AI on the market. The crowd erupted with questions. Who is he? Where is he? Why has he stayed hidden? And then Mason looked toward me. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "allow me to introduce the youngest co-founder of a $40 million tech empire, Adam Cole." Walking onto that stage was like stepping into another universe. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed like lightning. I took the mic, heart steady, voice clear. "7 days ago," I said, "someone told me, 'Good luck out there,' as they gave me a one-way ticket to start over. They didn't know I had already started building something that would change the world." The audience leaned in, hanging on every word. "Today isn't about proving anyone wrong," I continued. "It's about proving what happens when you believe in yourself, even when no one else does." The launch ended with a standing ovation. But the real moment, the moment that felt like destiny, came later that night. My story hit every major tech outlet. The 21-year-old visionary behind Ghost Shield. The hidden genius finally revealed. The boy they underestimated. My family saw it, of course. My sister called first, no smirk in her voice this time. "Adam, why didn't you tell us?" I thought for a moment. Would you have listened? Silence. Then my dad called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Son?" His voice cracked. "We didn't know." "You never asked," I replied softly. Not angry, just honest. My mum was crying in the background, and I felt a strange mix of sadness and freedom rise within me. "We're proud of you," my dad said. "Truly." I let the words settle. Maybe they meant them. Maybe they didn't. But either way, I didn't need their validation anymore. "Thank you," I said, "but I'm exactly where I need to be." That was the night I realized revenge doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need shouting or confrontation. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is success, so undeniable that the people who doubted you can't even form the words to respond. I didn't go back home after that. I didn't need to. My life had already moved far, far beyond those walls. But here's the part most people never hear. The next month, A national conference asked me to speak to young innovators. I walked onto that stage with thousands of eyes on me. They weren't looking at a failure. They weren't looking at the family disappointment. They were looking at someone who turned doubt into destiny. And when the talk ended, I closed with a message that I'll leave you with too. If someone ever hands you a one-way ticket out of their life, don't fight to stay. Walk away with your head up. Because sometimes that ticket isn't rejection, it's direction. And if you ever reach the point where the world underestimates you, let your success become the loudest story you tell. If you want more stories like this, stories of grit, comeback, and unstoppable revenge, make sure you follow, subscribe, and stay tuned. Your story might be the next one worth telling.